So, taxes. So by the end of this presentation, we're going to explain how taxes change prices and quantities, and how they are shared by buyers or sellers, and how they create inefficiency. Explain how income taxes and social security taxes change wage rates, and how they create inefficiency, and review ideas about the fairness of the tax system. So, taxes on buyers and sellers. Tax incidence. Tax incidence is the division of the burden of a tax between the buyer and the seller. When a good is taxed, it has two prices: a price that includes tax and a price that excludes the tax. So buyers respond to the price that includes the tax, while sellers respond to the price that excludes the tax. So tax is like a wedge between two prices. Suppose the government puts a $10 tax on smartphones. How does the price paid by the buyer change? And how does the price received by the seller change? And lastly, how is the burden of tax shared between the buyer and the seller? So let's look at this graph. So this figure, that's figure 8.1, shows what happens when the government taxes the buyer of smartphones. So you can see that this is our supply curve and this is our demand curve. So, and this is the equilibrium point with no tax, also called point 1. So when a $10 tax is added, the demand curve falls to this new one, this red line. So the gap between this demand curve and this other demand curve is the $10 tax. So we can see the effect. The supply still remains constant while the demand decreases. So the buyer's price rises to 105. That's for the new equilibrium point. So, and the seller's price falls to $95 to show a decrease, a $5 decrease in price of the smartphone. So the quantity decreases to 2,000 smartphones per week. The government's tax revenue is $20,000. That's this box labeled here. So taxes and efficiency. A tax places a wedge between the buyer's price, that's the marginal benefits, and the seller's price, marginal cost. The equilibrium quantity is less than the efficient quantity of a deadweight loaf rising. So let's look at the inefficiency of taxes. So here, this triangle here shows us our consumer surplus, these are producer surplus, and these are market equilibrium. So point 1 shows the market is efficient with the marginal benefit cost equal to the marginal cost. So here, that's this. So total surplus is the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus. Figure 8.2b shows how taxes create inefficiency. A $10 tax, that's this line, shifts the supply curve to S plus tax. So the supply curve goes from this to this. Marginal benefits exceeds that here. So our marginal benefits starts to get negative. Point 2 shows our marginal cost, and point 3 shows the shrinkage in consumer surplus. So this before was the consumer surplus, but now that the supply has been shifted to here, this represents consumer surplus. Also, the producer surplus shrinks. Like before, this huge triangle represented producer surplus, but because of the $10 tax, and since the quantity has reduced to 2,000 from 5,000, this represents producer surplus. So the government collects the tax revenue. So these two boxes represent government tax revenue. Also, the share of deadweight loss arises. So this triangle here represents a deadweight loss. The loss of consumer surplus and producer surplus is the cost of the tax. So the cost of the tax equals the tax revenue plus the deadweight loss. Excess burden is deadweight loss from the tax. So let's talk about the incidence, inefficiency, and elasticity of taxes. The incidence of a tax and its excess burden depends on the elasticity of demand and supply. For a given elasticity of supply, the buyer pays a larger share of the tax, the more inelastic the demand is for the good. For a given elasticity of demand, the seller pays a larger share of the tax, the more the inelastic the supply of the good. The more inelastic the demand or supply, the smaller is the excess burden. So, perfectly inelastic demand. For perfectly inelastic demand, buyers pay and it's efficient. Perfectly elastic demand, sellers pay and it is inefficient. For perfectly inelastic supply, the sellers pay and it is efficient. And for perfectly elastic supply, buyers pay and it is inefficient. So let's talk about tax rates. So tax rates are expressed in personal income tax, corporate income tax, social security tax, etc. Income taxes and social security taxes raise 3/4 of total government revenue. So let's talk about the effects of income tax. Tax on labor income. Firms can substitute machines for labor, so the demand for labor becomes elastic. Most people work for their income, so the supply of labor is inelastic. With elastic demand and inelastic supply, the worker bears the greater burden of income tax. Taxing the income from capital work is like taxing the income from labor. So one crucial difference, capital is intentionally mobile, and so the supply of tax is highly elastic. So tax on income from land and unique resources. This works in the same way as taxing the income from other sources, except for one crucial difference. The supply of land is highly inelastic. So the benefits principle. The benefits principle is a proposition that people should pay taxes equal to benefits they receive from public goods and services. This arrangement is fair because it means that those who benefit most pay the most. Ability to pay principle. This is a proposition that people should pay taxes according to how easy they can bear the burden. A rich person can more easily bear the burden of providing public goods than a poor person, so the rich should pay higher taxes than the poor. Horizontal equity is the requirement that taxpayers with the same ability to pay should pay the same taxes. Vertical equity is the requirement that taxpayers pay a greater ability to bear a greater share of the taxes. A tax can be progressive, proportional, or regressive. A progressive tax is a tax whose average rate increases and income tax increases. A proportional tax is a tax whose average rate is the same at all income levels, and a regressive tax is a tax whose average decreases as income level increases. So the big trade-off.